Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to welcome back two friends of the podcast, my admissions colleagues, Catie Yielding and Whitney Kestner. Catie and Whitney recently joined me here on the podcast to talk all about the interviews and how the interview fits into our application process. If you are applying to the Darden School of Business, you're going to want to listen to this episode. So without further ado, here's my interview with my admissions colleagues, Catie Yielding and Whitney Kestner. Catie, Whitney, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brett.
Thanks for having us, Brett.
Well, I should say welcome back. Catie, you were on the podcast not so long ago talking about all of our exciting admissions innovations for the new application cycle. And Whitney, our longtime podcast listeners will know that you actually have hosted an episode of the Experience Darden podcast. So you're both old pros at this. Welcome back.
It's good to be here.
All right. Well, with that introduction, why not reintroduce you to our listeners, since you're both so familiar, but, we've got some new listeners out there. So Catie, let's start with you. Who are you? What's your role here at Darden? And how long have you been at Darden?
Thanks for having me back, Brett. Happy to be here. I'm Catie Yielding. I have been on the Darden admissions team for 7 years now and lead our evaluation activity at the moment. So everything from getting that application ready to interviewing, helping all along the way there.
Absolutely. And this is an episode all about interview tips as we move into round one with round two on the horizon here in our 2021 cycle. So thank you for coming back on the podcast to talk about this. I know this episode is going to be super helpful for our applicants. Whitney, how about you? Who are you? What do you do at the Darden School, and how long have you been at Darden?
So yes, my name is Whitney Kestner, and delighted to be back with you guys today. And have been at Darden in the admissions office actually now for 13 years, and been a fun ride. So I do, seems like a little bit of everything, help certainly with the evaluation and recruiting for our full-time MBA, as well as for a little bit with our executive format and our partnership with the McIntyre School of Commerce on our Master's in Business Analytics.
Yeah, I would say that is a little bit of everything. So thank you, Whitney, for coming back on the podcast. For those of you looking for Whitney's episode where she interviewed someone, she interviewed Larry Mueller, who works very closely with our international students. So that was a few months ago, but go back and listen to it. You'll certainly recognize the sound of Whitney's voice as the only other host of the Experience Darden podcast.
And I think I also interviewed you, Brett, on the when we turned the tables and celebrated a big milestone with the podcast. So I just wanted to make sure all my credentials were known. For
the completists out there who are really keeping close notes. Absolutely. You're right. On the Exec MBA podcast, episode 50. It was a high watermark for us at that time. We're now on episode, let's just say we're in the 140s. So many, many moons ago. So Whitney, before we get into the sort of details of what we're going to talk about here today with interview tips, I just want to check in. How are you and your family doing at this time?
Oh, thanks for asking, Brett. We're doing well. Definitely finding our rhythm with the school year. My children go to a school where it's 1 week of virtual learning and 1 week in the classroom. So it seems to be a little bit of best of both worlds. And as you well know, they love playing sports. And so we do have some outlet for all of that energy. And so they've been active in swimming and baseball and lacrosse these days. All socially distanced, of course.
Absolutely. Lacrosse, naturally socially distanced sport. You would say baseball as well. All right. Well, Catie, how about you? How are you doing? How's your family doing?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Brett. I think we've all kind of settled into this new normal and doing pretty well. I think, like Whitney, one of the highlights has definitely been some added outdoor time, enjoying local walking trails and things like that. So now that students are back in the Charlottesville area, it's been fun spotting them occasionally out and about on walks too.
That's great. And last time you were here, you had a podcast recommendation for our listeners. I know you're a big podcast fan. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but anything that you're listening to these days, this is a podcast. We're pro podcasts here at the Experience Darden podcast.
Oh, I always got a podcast recommendation. Okay, so this one's a little off the wall, but this one's called Bunga Bunga. If you throw it back to your international politics, that it may sound familiar in the Italian political world. It's a Silvio Berlusconi-focused podcast, and it reminds you that there is chaos in a lot of different political systems, and this one's pretty entertaining.
All right. Well, last time I think it was all about some sort of mystery in the Alaskan wilderness. And so this is maybe a politics selection, globally minded politics selection. Really, podcast recommendations for all seasons. So thank you. Thank you for that, Catie. All right. Well, this is all about interviews, as promised. We're going to share our favorite interview tips. But before we really kind of get to that point, let's talk about what we like about interviews. So, Catie, what is your favorite thing about interviews here at the Darden School?
Well, it really is my favorite part of the entire application process. I think it's such a privilege and a pleasure to listen to people's stories that it's really a chance for me to put on my listening ears and hear what people have to share about themselves. And so I think it's definitely a skill that I enjoy improving in my own professional life, but more than that, it's a real pleasure to get to learn more about where people come from, what's brought them to their Darden interview, what is it been in their professional past, what are their goals. It's just a really great chance to learn more about somebody.
And Whitney, what do you enjoy about interviews?
Yeah, Catie said it well. We do get to hear some pretty amazing stories, and I feel like I learn about the person and their background, but also so much about different industries, different parts of the world, different cultures, different companies and industries that I haven't had exposure to directly. And so I just feel like every interview is a wonderful chance to learn more, and so definitely the highlight of the work that we do.
I would completely agree with that. I think we're always learning new things. That's one of the best things about this job. I came from the law school world, and we never interviewed anybody prior to making an offer of admission. And then to come to business school where you get to spend this time with everyone and that you're considering for an offer of admission, 35, 40 minutes with each candidate that's under consideration for an offer. That's a tremendous luxury. And I think very humbling for all of us, but also what an incredible opportunity for the candidate to share their story and for us to get that additional perspective. So Whitney, where does the interview fit in our review process? We just came off of early action where there is open interviews. Now we're moving into round one interviews. Where does it fit, the interview itself, in the review process?
Sure. All of our applicants are going to be read by at least two or maybe more admissions committee members. And so generally we're going to do one interview review before the interview, maybe two. And so we'll do that and then invite candidates to interview. And maybe this is where you were going, but after the interview, the interviewer will write an evaluation that will get added back to the application. And after that, there will be two more reviews by the admissions committee and then determining that final decision.
And Catie, I know you have spent a lot of time thinking about how we evaluate candidates, as in your role. Where do you see the interview fitting into all of that, right? There's multiple reads. How does the interview complement all the information that's being provided by the applicant?
Well, during the application itself, it's Darden's chance to ask the questions. So we get to choose the prompts that we ask people to answer about themselves. And so if they've been invited to an interview, it's because we see potential in that person. It means we already see them being a Darden student. And so we want to get to know them more. So I think if anyone is invited for an interview, they should see that as a really hopeful sign. And then the interview is a chance for them to go a lot deeper, share more details, especially about their professional personal life, and a lot of other topics too. But it's a chance for the person themselves to shape the narrative a little bit more. Since we already asked the questions on our end in the application, the interviewee has a little bit more leeway during the interview to give more context.
Yeah, the application itself is a great initial introduction to the applicant. The interview gives the applicant an opportunity to give a lot more depth to the information and even supplement the application. There's certainly things that you might want to share about your background that are not captured fully in the application itself. So another way for you to tell your story. And again, we get to sit there and listen and learn about you for 35, 40 minutes. So it's an incredible opportunity. Make the most of it. So our interviews are anonymous, Catie, and this means different things at different schools. And what does it mean at the Darden School, and why is this our particular approach?
So at Darden, it's about as anonymous as it gets. we take it the word very literally, and that your interviewer will not have seen the material prior to the interview itself. So that person will not have seen a resume, will have not seen the application. All they know is the name of the person that they are interviewing. So it really is an opportunity for the interviewee to have a blank slate. It gives them a chance to be a little bit more in the driver's seat in shaping that narrative. And it eliminates the bias of the interviewer to not come in with background information that may shape what they think of the person initially. So we find that it leads to a much more dynamic interview. It can go in so many different directions because you really are starting at zero. And we find it to be a much more engaging way for us to get to know the person.
You make such a good point that we don't come to the conversation with a lot of preconceptions about the candidate's credentials or whether they're likely to be admitted or anything, any of this kind of stuff, right? We are focused on listening to their story. Whitney, to you, I mean, how do you approach learning about someone for the first time, having that space with them, really focused on hearing their story? What do you think about as you're approaching those conversations?
I really do enjoy learning, starting at the beginning. So the way I generally will provide the sort of guidelines, if you will, for our time together, I enjoy hearing about someone's family and where they're from. I think that's so much about what makes us who we are and the richness of our unique backgrounds. And so it's not something that generally I think we need to spend a lot of time on, but I think it just kind of helps, to Catie's point about providing that greater context. And so learning about someone from early time through their academic work into their professional career, what has led you to this point to now want to pursue your MBA. I think the whys behind decisions that people make are very interesting. And again, everyone comes to this in their own unique path, their own experiences and expertise from their academic training, their professional background, their personal background. And so, that is what makes this such an interesting process. And I have been doing this for a while, and I will admit, sometimes I try to anticipate what someone might say or, where they might lead me. And then, I'm constantly reminded, and surprised in great ways about, what people have done. And that's truly what makes this, such a cool process and why we love what we do, because we are, kind of in the storytelling or story listening business.
So lots of good tips there. One of the things that you noted is that this isn't really a behavioral interview, right? This is a conversation, but it is. Let's talk a little bit more about what we mean by a conversation, because I don't think any of us means that it's supposed to be a 30-plus minute monologue for the candidate just talking about themselves. Of course, conversation implies that it's two ways, Catie, what would you share with someone who's sort of like, all right, tell me more about a conversational interview? Because many people, they've likely not had a conversational interview previously in their life.
I think you set it up well, Brett, that it's not a monologue, but it's also not something that you should come in with no preparation either, that there's a kind of a happy medium there. So in terms of preparing for a conversation like this, practice talking to somebody. You can come with a loose draft in mind of the high points that you want to hit, have an idea of the narrative you intend to share and the way you want to get there. And so you can kind of set that up and help drive that conversation, but be ready for the person on the other side to have questions as well. And so you want to be fluid enough that you can pause, ask or answer questions, and then be able to kind of pick the conversation back up and continue in the direction that you want to go. So I think that it can be an art to this style of an interview, and definitely is one that benefits with a little bit of practice as well.
Absolutely. Because I do think there's this kind of maybe false security that sometimes, conversation. I talk about myself all the time, right? You feel like it's, maybe very, very easy. And maybe it is, but you've got a lot you want to accomplish in a relatively limited amount of time. So practicing is wise. We're also, I should note, we're recording this in October of 2020 in the sort of midst of a pandemic. We're doing all these interviews via Zoom. Whitney, when you talk to people about practicing for a Zoom interview, what are the tips that you share with those candidates?
Sure. So, in non-pandemic times, we invite candidates that are living in the U.S. to interview in Charlottesville on the Darden grounds. And then for those that are outside of the U.S., generally have interviewed via Skype or now Zoom. So all that to say, we've got great experience interviewing candidates remotely and now going fully to Zoom. What I do appreciate about this opportunity to have this face-to-face conversation, even though it is virtual, is that you really continue to get the sense of who that person is and getting to see their facial expressions and the energy that they have for what they do or why they want to come to business school, why Darden, their passions once they graduate. All of that can really come through in, whatever means medium it is, and certainly through these Zoom conversations. So, Catie makes a good point to be familiar with your background, to be familiar with, why you want your MBA, why you're excited about Darden, what your goals are. Certainly all of those things that are pretty clear and pretty evident, but I think the more that you know yourself, the more that you know your story, I think that can come out all the more authentically in the interview. A little bit more tactical, I guess, we will ask for your picture ID, and so good to have either your license or your passport at the ready so that you can hold it up to the camera. Not a perfect, check there, but it is helpful for our team, and we will ask. So to have a picture ID. Generally, you're going to be, sort of the top half, on camera, and so looking professional, thinking about the background behind you, things like that. Important to think through for sure. One thing I've noticed, I think it can be tempting to perhaps have some notes on the side or maybe your resume to help prompt you. And, my thought there is when I'm interviewing someone in person, we are sitting across from each other, generally no paper, no resume, and it really does allow for that conversation to take place. And so I'm looking to create that type of environment via Zoom as well. And so my recommendation, my ask to candidates is, put your notes aside, put your resume aside, and allow for that more back and forth conversation to take place. I guess my last thing, as we are conducting this via Zoom now, get used to looking at that small camera. And I think everybody probably has a whole lot of practice with that right now, but that's something, to have that level of eye contact during your interview, I think that can be helpful too in making that connection.
Make a good point about the notes. I think oftentimes we think, oh, well, you can't really see, but you can notice the eye drift, right, to some other place. And, you know, again, a conversation, if you've really done the introspective work and self-reflection, that's really kind of essential for the application process. You should be able to hold your own when you're talking about your background and why you want to get an MBA, why you want to come to Darden, what your goals are post MBA without reviewing a whole lot of notes. Catie, what advice do you share with folks about Zoom interviews? Any other tips you might offer?
Well, I loved all of Whitney's. I think that, we're living in different times, and while you need to be professional, I think that, you don't have to maybe dress up to the same degree.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, I don't care if you have on jeans. I can't see them. It's okay. As long as it looks professional, it's fine with me. I think also people sometimes get stressed about the technology, and I do think it's important to test it beforehand, make sure your audio and visual is what you think it is. But if something goes wrong, it's okay. We understand. We have all had little tech glitches here and there. We're going to work with you. We'll figure it out. So know that we're on your side. We know that there are unique challenges right now, and we'll make sure that it all works out.
All good points. And I guess they now call it a mullet wardrobe. Is that the way that people refer to it?
Very accurate.
Is that I don't know if that's made it into the parlance. But I've seen that a few references to that out on the internet, to the extent that that's a reflection of anything. But the other thing that I always share with people is talking in this kind of Zoom world, and that back and forth takes a little bit more energy than it might in an in-person interaction, where you can feed off the other person. You have a little bit of a barrier here. We try to make it as much like a conversation as we can, but you might need to generate a little bit more energy than you would if you were in person. That's the thing that I always am struck by when doing webinars or whatever. That might be a bit like it. So now let's talk a little bit about, you've shared some tactics of preparation. For you, Whitney, when you talk with candidates about, okay, at the end, this is what a successful interview looks like here at Darden. What do you highlight for people would make a successful interview?
I think that if I have a good sense of what their background is, and I can envision them as a member of the Darden community, I can get a sense for the perspective that they would bring to classroom discussions. Maybe it's a technical skill set that they've acquired through their work, through their academic training, global perspective for students that have worked and lived in different countries, that cultural awareness, just sort of who this person would be in the classroom and outside of the classroom as well. Someone who really will get involved in the community, get involved in clubs and organizations. I think that Darden is a place where the more you put into it, the more that you will get out of it. And so I think for us, it's helpful, and what I hope to get out of that interview is, again, sort of this glimmer of who this person would be, and what they would look to contribute and gain from the experience. I also hope that, I guess a successful interview is that the candidate walks away and feels like I had an opportunity to really share who I am, to make my case, through this process, that I had a positive experience engaging, with the interviewer, and that I learned about Darden too. I think that, we're asking a lot of questions about who the candidates are, but we also see it as a great way for the candidate to continue to learn about Darden. So I think that's sort of what a successful interview would be to me.
Yeah, lots of good content there. I mean, in some ways, the whole application process is an imaginative exercise for us as we imagine who someone might be in the community here. Catie, what would you say, in your estimation, a successful interview looks like at the end of the day?
So I think it's an exchange where both people learn something at the end of the conversation, that we as an admissions team, have a better sense of who that person is, how they're going to contribute to our community, and that the interviewee leaves the conversation feeling like they got to leave it all on the table, that they really got to pitch themselves, share what it is that they value, what's important to them, what they'll bring to Darden. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is in our application, we don't actually ever ask why someone wants to attend Darden. And so during the interview, that's the time to talk about it, and both to share why a person wants to attend, but also to ask a lot more questions that, in this year in particular, we understand people may not have visited. And so it's a time for the interviewee to get to ask more about what the school is like and to learn more about resources too. So I think a successful interview is one where both people feel like they were able to get their questions answered and have kind of productive dialogue, with some time management involved too.
I like that, time management involved. Mm-hmm.
And it's a great point about why Darden. We don't ask about it in the application because we really want to get to know the applicant, not necessarily us. But it's good fodder for the interview for sure. And we appreciate when people have done their research, kind of dug down into the sort of deeper, next level reasons why someone might be interested in Darden. Let's talk about a few other things that might come up in the interview. We ask about hobbies and interests, sometimes global experiences. We also, ask about people's openness to other perspectives, backgrounds, experiences. This is an important value here at the Darden School, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. We ask about it in the short answer questions on the application. Could very well come up again as part of the conversation in the interview. Catie, are there things that you share with applicants about these questions, or things that people should be thinking about as they prepare for these possible topics as well?
I think that was a great overview of some of the additional topics that we hope to learn about during the conversation. So I'd say the first half of the interview leans more towards kind of that storytelling, sharing more about their background. Some of these topics come up organically, and some of them may be questions that we ask instead. And so if we haven't had a chance to maybe dig into international activities or share more about someone's DEI perspective, then be prepared for the interviewer to want to learn more about the point of view and to ask specific questions along those lines. I also want to note that you're more than just what you learned in school or spend your 9 to 5 doing, and so want to know about those other interests. So to the extent that have other activities, we want to know all about them, how you spend your time, what's meaningful. So that's going to be a part of who you bring to the Darden community, what you bring to the Darden community. And so we want to know what you value today too.
Absolutely. Our students are very involved in the life of the school, do many other things in addition to being business students here at the Darden School. And, we talked about it a bunch here on the podcast, but 50 plus student organizations and a very active student body doing many things in the Charlottesville area. So Whitney, one of the things that we talk about a lot about Darden is that this is about growing students as leaders. And, Darden is perhaps considered general management, case method. All of this is kind of code for leadership. Is there an opportunity for people to talk about leadership and impact during their interview? And if so, how do you encourage candidates to kind of think about that? Not too much detail, but just enough to kind of paint that picture. Because, we ask about it in the short answer question. It's obviously an important value of the school. What do you encourage candidates to think about?
Yeah, I think it's always that balance between, to Catie's earlier point about time management, there's a limited amount of time that we have together. We do come in this anonymous format. And so the opportunity is for the applicant to make sure they are highlighting what they believe is important based on their background and, again, sort of what they will bring to Darden. So I think as it relates to leadership, we often talk about leading from where you are within your organization, and depending on where someone is in their professional career, perhaps they don't have a leadership role per se in their title or in their specific roles and responsibilities, but how have they been able to take on ownership take initiative with a project. Maybe it's getting involved in an organization within your company and being able to make an impact there. And so it probably is always helpful to take a step back as a candidate and think about where are those opportunities, where are those examples, I should say, of when I have shown leadership. Perhaps it is some great insight into your undergraduate experience and leading a club, or playing being a captain on a sports team or something like that. So I think that's really where the judgment and the opportunity I think can come for the candidates to make sure we understand. I do find that sometimes candidates can be very general in how they talk about their experiences, and again, sort of, I've interviewed a lot of candidates and read a lot of applications. So in some ways, maybe I start to get a picture, maybe based on other candidates that I've met, I can understand a little bit about their day-to-day. But I think that those candidates that sort of take it to that next step and provide a more concrete example to support, their general responsibilities, I think that is always going to be the most compelling.
I think our listeners are starting to get a good sense of why it's important to practice. There's so many things to potentially accomplish in this conversation. Limited amount of time, again, time management exercise. It's totally doable, but is worth practicing. Maybe with a friend or colleague who knows you well. I loved your point about leading from where you are. I think particularly, I'm going to speak a little bit about executive MBA camps, but I think it's true about full-time MBA as well. People oftentimes think that we're looking for specific things when it comes to leadership or impact. And the reality is, our goal is to learn about you and try to figure out what you will bring to this community in light of all the things that you've done and how you see the world. And fast forward, imagine you as a Darden student. We're not operating off of a checklist or a checkbox type thing. Really trying to understand who you are. The interview is obviously a great way to do that. So lots of good tips have been shared here, but you've both been doing this for a while. I know you've talked to many, many prospective students, either one-on-one conversations, coffee chats, webinars, events, so many things. Catie, what is your favorite interview tip when you talk to people about the Darden interview? What's one thing you typically recommend that they do or think about?
Well, I'm laughing already because it's a tip that people are going to roll their eyes at. But I think that to the extent that someone can relax and enjoy the conversation, it's going to go a lot better. And I think whether you're in person or on camera, that if you have practiced enough, if you know your background, if you know your reasons for wanting to get your MBA and can just let it flow from there, it's going to be a much more organic conversation, much more productive time together and enjoyable. I mean, we want the person to have fun too. And so I think if you can just relax a little bit, you're much more likely to enjoy it along the way.
I love that advice. It squares with something that our boss, Donna Clark, shared on an app tip session earlier, I guess a few weeks ago. She was talking about just enjoying the journey of applying to business school. The interview is part of that, right? You are meeting someone, and you might be interviewing with a student here at the Darden School. You might be interviewing with a second-year student, member of this student admissions committee. You might be interviewing with an admissions committee member, but you're getting a chance to meet someone, ask questions, make that kind of personal connection. Certainly something we value, and is, again, another way for you to learn more and build your network as you go through all of this. So I'm glad we were able to get that in there, because we talked a lot about you need to think about this and this and this, but the point of all of this is to enjoy this and have fun. So Whitney, what's your number one tip that you would share with our listeners here?
Yeah, I think Catie hits it square on the head in terms of enjoy it and try to relax. I know that is difficult to do in the moment at times, but I hope that the listeners today gather from this that we love what we do. We love hearing your story. And so, again, this interview is ultimately that great chance for you to do all of that. So, don't be afraid to sort of let the excitement come out. I think the interview, I often say, like, when the eyes light up and someone gets excited about what they're telling me, I get excited. That's awesome. That's what we're, kind of that type of connection. It helps me think, okay, Darden can help this person be successful in what they're looking to do, and making those connections along the way. So, let your true self come through, share that story, be authentic. This is not a business, this is not a job interview, it is a business school interview. So there are going to be aspects of who you are that you can share a little bit more, to your hobbies, your community, your involvement, and your family and things like that. And so know that we do want to get a sense of who you are as that full person.
As all great points there. So James Peterson was on here not so long ago and was talking about his experience applying to Darden once and then reapplying to Darden. First time he went through the application process, he kind of did the thing where you think you write the answers that you think people want to read, and you try to be the applicant you think admissions committees want to see. Second time around, he really focused on just being his real self. And of course, he's at Darden now. And, it makes a difference. It comes through when you're being authentically you. And I think we talk a lot in webinars and on the podcast here about where there are opportunities for you to be, to really kind of put your personality and who you are on display. And there are definitely parts of the application where you can do that, short answer questions, resume, all the things, where you're providing that kind of little bit more editorial content. But at the end of the day, the interview is the best opportunity to do that within the application process. And so make the most of it. But yes, enjoy it and have fun with it. So Whitney and Catie, it's been such a pleasure having you here on the podcast, having you back on the podcast. Any last words of wisdom, advice? Catie, anything you'd like to share before we sign off here? Anything about interviews or just application process generally?
We've covered a lot of ground. Thanks for great questions. I hope overall it comes through that we want our interviewees to have a really positive experience. It's something we value, and I think our team really puts a lot of emphasis on wanting to help people succeed in this process. We're here to help you share your best self, and I think our interview format hopefully helps all of our candidates feel that way and really get the chance to share more about themselves.
Absolutely. Whitney, any last words of encouragement, advice, anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
I do, but it's going to be less inspirational and sort of all-encompassing than Catie's. Mine was that just remember, you can receive an invitation to interview all the way up until the decision release date. So it's a rolling process, so don't read too much into when you get your invitation.
That's a great point. I'm glad we got that in there. I'm glad we got Catie's point in too, and that one, because we get that question a lot from prospective students. People, the internet doesn't always help with things. And so people start wondering, did you get an invitation to interview? I'm seeing that people are getting invitations to interview. Just wait. They don't all come out at the same time, and it's on a rolling basis. So I'm so glad that got in there, because I know that is a common question from our applicants. So, well, Catie and Whitney, thank you again. I think we got a lot of good content here for people, and if you're listening to this and preparing for a Darden interview, good luck. We look forward to getting to know you better.
Thank you, Brett.
Bye, Brett.
And that was my interview with my admissions colleagues, Catie Yielding and Whitney Kestner. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.